What if I told you that you've been playing Piper wrong this entire time? This video features the best tips and tricks to help you play the baking sniper Piper. Alright, so to start off this guy, let's go to talk about Piper's main attack, Gunbrella. Piper shoots a single bullet from her parasol that travels very quickly. The farther the bullet travels, the more damage the bullet will inflict, so Piper is less effective against enemies near her, but excels at supporting her team at range. Piper's attack is a very slow reload speed and cooldown of half a second. Now when you're playing Piper and using her main attack, try to predict where the enemy is going to be moving to. Piper's shots are narrow, so you will need to aim ahead of moving targets in case they move out of the shot's range. This is something that will take a lot of practice since sharpshooters are typically higher skill cap brawlers within the game. Piper ironically is going to be pretty effective when she's hiding inside of bushes. Whether you are using Piper's ambush star power or not, hiding inside bushes in open areas will allow Piper to utilize her high range far away without giving away her location. And of course, having that element of surprise gives you the upper hand against brawlers that you outrange. Now Piper's range can be pretty deceiving sometimes, but it's all because of how quickly her bullets can travel. Don't ever underestimate Piper's range. If you are a more close range brawler, juke her shots by moving side to side while steadily advancing to her. Piper is only easy to defeat at close range, otherwise she will definitely put up a good fight from a long range. Now when you're playing Piper, I always recommend that you are manually aiming your attacks. I can't believe I have to say this, but you shouldn't ever be auto-aiming with Piper, let alone any sharpshooter within the game. You need to practice aiming every shot because it will give you the best chance possible to connect more often. The only time where I say it's okay you can use auto-aim with Piper is when the enemy is standing very close to you. Unless you're like directly next to the enemy where it's impossible to miss with auto-aim, then you can spam your attacks. Just trust me that developing your aiming skills will help you become a better Brawl Stars player in the long run. Now there are a couple of things you can do in order to counter Piper's main attacks. First is to practice your dodging. By dodging Piper's incoming attacks, this will allow you to slowly close down the distance, get closer to Piper, and even if she hits you, she will do less and less damage every time. Another thing you can do is use walls and bushes to sneak up to Piper. Just using anything to your advantage to decrease the distance between you and Piper will drastically help you, unless of course she has her super. Now speaking of Piper's super, let's go and talk about her super Poppin'. When her super is used, Piper will jump up into the air and drop 4 grenades below her that deal heavy damage, knock back enemies near them, and destroy obstacles when they detonate. While in the air, Piper is completely immune to all damage besides status effects and damage applied over time. The grenades take 0.3 seconds to detonate and have a 2-tile explosion radius. Now what I personally love about Piper's super is using it to shape the map to your liking. For example, you can destroy walls which your opponents would otherwise be using to hide behind, and also due to Piper's very low damage at close range and her low health, she cannot afford to be ambushed by tanks at close range and instead must have an open area which tanks have to cross to get to her, allowing Piper to position herself well and attack the enemy. Now something that's very bad about Piper is she sucks at close range combat. Piper can be overwhelmed and defeated easily if she's unprotected due to her low health and slow reload speed, as well as the fact that she only does sufficient damage from distance. Piper is most effective when she is covered by other brawlers on her team. If enemies do get too close, it may be a good idea to use Piper's super to escape if her super is charged. I would recommend aiming her super as well because otherwise you land in the place from where you jumped from. Now Piper's super is great to her kit because it helps her defend against aggressive brawlers. Even though it only affects the area right near her, it can also be used offensively in a riskier play. Piper can rush the enemy team, drop the grenades, and fly away. In addition, she can use her super to destroy enemy cover to open up the map. This plays to her advantage because her long range is more effective in open maps. Now when you're being pressured by aggressive brawlers, I try to recommend to people to not panic when using your super. When escaping, always try your best to aim Piper away from the enemy rather than auto-aiming, because if you auto-aim her super, she will only land in the place from where she activated her super without covering any distance. Now sometimes there are going to be scenarios where it's okay to actually just quickly use your super. If you are in a very pressured situation and your enemy has short range, you can quick fire the super because the knockback of the grenades is reliable to distance yourself from the enemy. I'd recommend just always try to aim the landing point when you can. Now at the start of every match, I recommend prioritizing charging a Piper super as fast as you can. You want to always have your super in your back pocket ready to use in case brawlers like assassins try to attack you. You need this super to escape dangerous situations that could ultimately save your life and allow you to continue pressure throughout the match. Think carefully when it comes to the position of Piper's landing when using her super. Since it takes a long time for her to land, it will be easy for the enemies to predict where she will end up. Try going to places that the enemy will take a long time to reach, such as across water regions or behind walls, but make sure you do not land close to the location of other enemies. But okay, that's gonna be it for a super. Let's go and talk about her gadgets, but the first one I want to talk about is gonna be auto aimer. Piper pulls out a pistol and fires a small thin glowing bullet aimed towards the nearest enemy in a 7-tile radius. The bullet will push the target back and temporarily slow them down for 1 second if it connects. Now you want to use this gadget against short-range brawlers. Piper's auto-aimer gadget can be used to stop brawlers who are pursuing her at a close range, since her main attack does very little damage at that kind of range. It can also help Piper land her narrow shots with her main attacks. Now when the enemies are going to be slowed down from the auto-aimer gadget, take advantage of that. Since the movement speed of her enemy will be decreased, she can hit them more easily, or she could use their reduced movement speed to try and make an escape. And I'd recommend not using this gadget and trying to hit the enemies if they're further than a few tiles from you. This gadget can be very effective when it connects, right? Even though it can shoot at the nearest enemy up to a 7-tile radius, the farther away the enemy is, the higher the chance of the gadget missing. Allow the enemies to get closer to you so you can increase your odds of connecting the bullet. Now an underrated feature of this gadget is actually combining it with your super. I would use the gadget to slow down the enemy and then use your super to deal damage and escape the enemy at the same time. Or if you don't have your super charged up, having this gadget is another great aspect of Piper's kit to defend against aggressive brawlers. Now here's a tip you can try to do if you want to counter auto-aimer. I would suggest staying as far away as you can to make it as difficult as possible for Piper to hit the gadget onto you. But okay, that's gonna be for Piper's first gadget. Let's go to talk about her second gadget, homemade recipe. Piper's next attack is a seeking bullet that will curve towards the nearest enemy. The homing bullets fly for an additional 1.66 tiles. Now I always tell people when they're playing Piper to try and use it when the enemy is one shot away from dying. Piper's homemade recipe gadget can be used to defeat low health enemies hiding behind walls, or to increase the chances of hitting an enemy brawler at low health to guarantee their defeat. Now this gadget is also going to be great if the enemy is just outside of your main attack range. Piper can also take advantage of the extra range of her gadget to finish off enemies that are just outside of her attack range. This is great to catch enemies off guard since they'll think they are safe, but in reality they're going to get cooked. Now when you're playing Piper, I'd recommend using this gadget 99% of the time. Even though homemade recipe got nerfed, the gadget is still helpful as long as you shoot it in the general vicinity of the enemy so that the gadget can connect. Now when using this gadget, just don't give the enemies time to react to get out of the way. An amateur mistake I always see is that people activate the gadget but wait to use it. Use homemade recipe immediately after you connect onto an enemy and you know they're within one shot of dying. This gives them less time to react and a higher chance of your gadget connecting. Now in order to counter this gadget, I recommend just running very far away from Piper. This gadget will only travel an additional 1.66 tiles, so just try and stay really far away from Piper just to be safe. Either that or you can hide behind obstacles to throw off the homing to curve into that obstacle, or whatever it is you're hiding behind. But okay, that's gonna be for Piper's gadgets. Let's go and talk about her star powers, but the first one I want to talk about is gonna be ambush. When Piper is hidden within a bush, her main attack gains 1190 bonus damage. Now obviously when you're using this star power, you want to be using it on maps that have a lot of bushes. This star power only works when you're standing in bushes, so you want to run this star power on maps where you know you can spend most, if not all of the match within a bush. The additional damage can definitely catch enemies off guard, especially with you being hidden. Now in order to counter her ambush star power, I'd recommend running brawlers that can break obstacles and bushes. You want to destroy as much bushes as possible so that Piper can't get any value out of this star power. This is what makes this star power kinda weak in this meta, is that there are so many brawlers in the game that have some sort of ability to destroy bushes and counter ambush. Now don't get me wrong, ambush is a very good star power, but it's not gonna be better than snappy sniping. Theoretically, dealing up to 1190 bonus damage is super good, but you need to really be connecting with most of your shots to get a lot of value out of the star power. Also, when you play Piper, it's mostly gonna be on open up maps that don't tend to have a lot of bushes, so ambush isn't too popular these days. But speaking of Piper's other star power, let's go to talk about that star power, snappy sniping. Upon hitting an enemy, Piper instantly reloads 0.4 ammo, increasing her reload speed. If Piper hits turrets or spawnables, it will also activate. This also includes hits from her auto-aimer gadget. Now I personally love using this star power because you can never go wrong with gaining more ammo. Snappy sniping allows you to continue the pressure and rewards you for connecting your shots. It's a snowball effect where the more shots you hit, the quicker your reload speed will be and the more opportunities you will have to hit more shots. You can never go wrong with running this star power. This star power is also going to be great to counter short range brawlers. Think about it, when short range brawlers pressure you at a close range, that is causing the bullets to travel over a shorter distance. This will allow you to reload quicker since you're hitting shots more frequently, thus helping you do more damage per second. Even though the damage will be less since it's at a closer range, hey, it can help you charge up your super so you can jump away if the enemy is still alive. Now unfortunately, I don't really have a tip for you guys in order to counter snappy sniping. Like, let's just say the enemy Piper is absolutely cooking, there's not much you can do to stop her. Your only hope is to bait out Piper's shots and dodge as much as you can so you don't get hit, and give her extra value with snappy sniping. Now those of you guys that seen my original Piper guide that I made sometime last year, the only reason I'm making an updated one now is because of her Hypercharge boppin. When activated, Piper's next super will drop 6 bombs instead of 4 and will travel faster. When she lands, she knocks back enemies and destroys the environment. She also gains a 26% speed boost, a 25% damage boost, and a 5% shield boost. Now an underrated feature about this Hypercharge is needing to take advantage of the knockback. Since Piper's Hypercharge can knock back enemies when landing, she can use that to her advantage by knocking back enemies and quickly walk backwards and snipe at the enemy, which will give you a free kill. What's also great about this Hypercharge is you can use it to break open the map even quicker. If for whatever reason you're playing Piper on a map that has a lot of bushes or walls, using your Hypercharge to obliterate all obstacles on the map will only help Piper that much more. Just make sure you are not putting your teammates in jeopardy if they are running brawlers that benefit from all the obstacles and bushes. So the build I recommend you guys use with Piper is going to be using the homemade recipe gadget, the snappy sniping star power. The first gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the shield gear. I'd recommend shield gear because Piper doesn't have the most amount of health and she can definitely benefit from gaining that few hundred health. The next gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the gadget charge gear. Homemade recipe is such a great gadget, and it can really come in clutch in a lot of different situations for you. But if you guys are not really a fan of using the gadget charge gear, then you can go ahead and use the damage gear. Piper can already do quite a bit of damage from a distance, but you can never go wrong with dealing more damage, right? Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that brawler guide, I highly recommend you guys go check out this brawler guide right here.